Donald Trump had left the White House and said, the hell with all of you. I won that election. It was stolen from me. You're never going to hear from me again. I'm riding off into the Florida sunset, and I'm going to play golf, and you'll never hear from me again. Would any of these cases have been brought? Would all of them have brought? Were there some that you should have brought, but not all?
Well, one certainly would, excuse me, one certainly would not have been brought, and that's the 14th Amendment, Section 3, that you mentioned, the one relating to whether or not he should be on the ballot. I leave it to the others to talk about the other cases.
Well, first, treat Bharara, everybody. What a mind.
I did want to express thanks to you, Thane. I've known you a long time. Thane once gave me a job, thanks very much, years ago, to be a legal writing professor at Fordham University. So I thank you for that.
Well, I'll say, I mean, first of all, it's always the head U.S. attorney who punts to the real grunt workers or the line prosecutors. It's fine. But when you look at it, you know, if you categorize it in different ways, one, there's the political response. And I think his team would tell you, but for running for office, he would never be prosecuted for anything. That this is all some political ploy to try to ensure that he will not be a viable rival of the incumbent president, Joe Biden. But I think if you look at this from the legal perspective and without that lens that he'd like to, you know, put on you, the actions that he took to try to impede the transition of power would be things that even if he did not run for office, would still qualify for viable allegations. The behavior that he took that was outside of the realm of any official duties or acts that he was able to take as the President of the United States would still constitute criminal allegations. And of course, the civil matters that are outside of his time in the office and things that relate to claims that have been made and already resolved in some cases, I think are also there. And so you have to look at it from the perspective of, you know, there's always the BCAD notion, there's the before the presidency, after the presidency, and what took place in between. And I think for all those areas, it's absolutely viable, but he'll have a different response.
Oh, go ahead, Neal.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I've not been to the 92nd Y until today. It's my first time here.
Wow.
Well, we're going to remedy that.
I've heard all about this storied institution, but learned a bit more about how the tradition goes back to 1885 and the Hebrew Association starting this, and it's a real privilege to be here, and particularly with these two. So to answer, I agree, Laura, with you. I think all of these cases would have been brought. I mean, what he did on January 6th is a crime every day of every week, whether he's going to be president or not. Again, that's absolutely the kind of thing you prosecute. You know, whether or not the stolen documents, I mean, before I was at the Solicitor General's office, I was National Security Advisor at the Justice Department. Of course we would prosecute this every day of every week. We would prosecute that. That's really serious stuff. And then I think the hardest one is the case going to trial next week, the so-called hush money case, which some people poo-poo is, you know, not that serious. And, you know, I mean, it isn't compared to some of Trump's other things. I mean, Donald Trump's legal troubles are like his hair. It's a mess. And, you know, and so, yes, it's not insurrection against the government. But if you think about the entire regime of campaign finance disclosure, it's all about one central idea, which is transparency, getting information to the voters. This hush money payment occurred at a really critical time. It was days after the Access Hollywood tape had been revealed, showing Trump to be just a horrendous individual. Had the Stormy Daniels thing come out, it would have added fuel to that fire. And so he told his lawyer to go and pay the $130,000 and tried to claim it was a business expense when it wasn't, all to try and hide this from the American people and the voters. That, to me, is prosecutable, regardless of whether he's running for president or not.